Welcome to the Reheat on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. I'm Joe Cook, got RT Young. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And, of course, make sure you head to InsideTexas.com. First link in our description. Join for just $1. Get a full year of access to The Athletic. Also get a full year of access to the best Texas Longhorns analysis, coverage, intel, recruiting insight, and much more. Plus, join the best Texas Longhorns community. First link in our bio. Go check that out. First link in our description. So come join Inside Texas. Got a lot of great stuff on there, including the Reheat, which you wrote earlier on Sunday, RT, and then something here again on Monday. And I think what you brought up, you posted it in a thread on Inside Texas, and I think you and I kind of had the same idea. Like, you posted it and you're like, oh, that's something. That's something that could be fleshed out. And you're basically saying, when you see week 2 Texas in 2023, that's kind of the high point. And they plateaued, and they kept that plateau for a while. And they did the same thing in 2024, but we may not see the same thing here this year.
Yeah, I sure hope not. I hope that week 2 Texas against San Jose State in 2025 isn't the best version that we see of this Longhorns team. And I don't think it's going to be, but we saw that the 2 previous years, that in 2023, especially, maybe that Big 12 championship against Oklahoma State or the week before against Texas Tech in the 50-7 beatdown, you saw Texas regain the heights of week 2, but they were kind of always chasing who they were that night against Nick Saban in Alabama. And I don't think they ever really got back there. And then last year, there were aspects of the team on the defense that definitely improved as the season went along and became an absolutely historic and excellent side of the ball for the Longhorns. But that who Quinn Ewers was in week 2 in Ann Arbor, Michigan last year, I mean, that dangled over the Longhorns' heads and Longhorn fans' heads and even the national media all year of, man, if they can just become that team again under Quinn Ewers, this team really could be unstoppable. But they were never able to regain that just efficiency, almost that blunt efficiency that you saw from Ewers that day in Ann Arbor in week 2. And, Arch Manning referred to the win this past week 2 as sloppy. He called himself sloppy. He said, no, I'm not hurt. I'm just sloppy. The team's sloppy. He, right after the game just said, we've got to get better. And obviously you are seeing a team that's a work in progress. And I compared it to the last 2 years. The Longhorns under Quinn Ewers were like a python that played with its food until it was ready to strangle it. And I think what you're seeing, the Longhorns under Arch Manning, they're like a big Labrador or golden retriever puppy that's kind of in the teenage years that maybe isn't totally sure or doesn't realize how big it is and all that it's capable of already. So it's almost got to grow into itself. And I think that that's what you're going to see over the course of the season is a team that realizes how talented it is, what it's capable of, maybe slows down a little bit. And as Sark said today in his press conferences, stop pressing so much.
Yeah, I think with all these young players, I mean, just think about the idea where you have 4 new starters on the offensive line, and we've made the Trevor Gooseby and the Cole Hudson and the Neto Umeozulu qualifiers. The Neto one's a little bit different now with Connor Stroh, but we made those qualifiers with the O-line. We made the qualifiers with the tight ends. Like, hey, these guys have been in the program. Spencer Shannon's been around. Jack Endries is, a transfer with a lot of experience. Made the qualifiers with Ryan Wingo as a 4th guy and Parker Livingstone's in the program. Made the qualifiers with Arch with, hey, this is the 3rd year in the program. He's Arch Manning, all that. But they still hadn't seen live action together, and we're still seeing all that come together. And I think it's, like you mentioned, it's a little bit different because those 2023 teams and 2024 teams, yeah, there was some coming together that had to happen. But those teams, I guess, had a little bit more time to gel together. They were kind of the pinnacle of a developmental process. And, you don't really get that rebuilding process at Texas. You have to do the reloading thing, but it still takes time to come together. And I think we're seeing that that's taking a little bit of time. It's a young team. It's a hungry team. And so that's why, as you also wrote today, some of these players are trying a little too hard. They're trying to make the most of the moment already when they just need to do kind of what their assignment is and let the natural talent take over.
Yeah, and I think that not many Longhorn fans had on their bingo card through 2 weeks that Ryan Wingo and Colin Simmons would essentially be net negatives so far as their production goes. Arch Manning, he wasn't very good in Columbus. He's very good in spots against San Jose State. Obviously, he had moments of sloppiness, but I don't think he's been a net negative. But those three players were factoring into the sky high expectations for this season. And I really like what Steve Sarkisian said today, and this is what I wrote about for Inside Texas today, was almost this encouragement to Colin Simmons that I think applies to the whole team of you can't have 10 sacks on one play, and you can't exceed all of the expectations and all of the pressure that's been put on you, and you can't basically exceed your output from last year in just one snap on one pass rush. And I think that goes for the whole team. And I think that's something that fans should remind themselves of also, that this team isn't going to get all of the questions answered about it in week 2. And they're not going to totally remove any of the doubt that you have in week 2. I was listening to a national podcast yesterday, and it was just talking about, man, I don't know about Texas. They're not taking care of the business the way that they should be. And I see where they're coming from, and obviously this is a podcast that has to watch almost every FBS game, and I can't imagine having to do that. I luckily just get to have eyes on Texas and really their rivals in the SEC. But do you want Texas to take care of business now against San Jose State, or do you want them to work out the kinks, stop pressing and figure out who they are, and then become a finished product come December, come January? And that's ultimately what it's all about. And as much as there are maybe some questions about the offense and frustrations about the penalties, one thing that I do love about Steve Sarkisian's approach to this season is you can tell with everything that he's doing, with his approach to Colin Simmons, with sitting guys like Trey Wisner and Alex January, he's taking an NFL-like approach to this season, because that's what gets you over the finish line in today's college football. It's not winning week 2 like maybe it used to be the case. Winning in Ohio State 20 years ago, that got you pretty far, but that would have been nice for fans, would have been a nice celebration, but ultimately there's still work to be done.
Before we keep going, got to show some love to our sponsor, that is David McClellan.
I'm just going to say, guys, you probably need a fiduciary financial advisor, and I've got the guy for you. His name is David McClellan with Forum Financial. He works broadly and deeply with his clients as a financial life coach, and he should know something about coaching because he won several national championships as a swimmer for the University of Texas. He specializes in financial planning and has contributed numerous articles to Kiplinger on the topic of retirement tax bombs. So contact David today to be your fiduciary financial planner and schedule a 1-hour consultation to assess your financial situations. The free consultation is available, so just give him a call. The number is 312-933-8823. That's 312-933-8823. His email is also in the description below.
You mentioned the NFL style of things, and I think we saw some people talk on Inside Texas about how maybe the way that they readjusted spring and the way that he conducted fall camp looks a little more NFL-like, maybe save some hits. And he's talked about saving hits and getting ready for 16, 17 games. And while I understand the idea of maybe keeping some hits off of guys, there's no preseason in college. Do you think Texas may be treating some of these out-of-conference games to where, hey, if you're firing on all cylinders, you can win 66-7. But, if you're not, and you can get some guys some experience and see what works and doesn't, do you think maybe Sark's, without saying this outright to his team, treating this like some opportunities for auditions and preseason action before they get to Florida?
I mean, I think so, definitely by the number of players that we're seeing played. And, I noticed early on in the game, so many times where Xavier Filsamy and Brad Spence and Zena Umeozulu were out on the field, and you're seeing the tight end rotation widen. Still, maybe would like to see that wide receiver rotation get a little wider. And obviously, guys like Khalid Lockett flashed at the end of the game, and Dalen McCutcheon got some early run. But you maybe like to see that expand a little bit more. But I think he is treating this like an audition, because you're going to need players deep down in the depth chart later in the season, and they're going to need to be ready for expanded stakes and for bigger stages. So getting them ready now, it's less about, it's garbage time, everybody gets to play. Mac Brown played a lot of players back in the day, but I think it was mostly in garbage time scenarios. His rotation in nut crunching time was always pretty tight. He had his few guys that he trusted. And I think with Sark, it really is about that expanded approach to making this a long season. So that's the primary way I notice it. And I do wonder if maybe some of the candy and the window dressing that wasn't involved in the game plan on the offensive side of the Ohio State game is because of that, is because of layering it on. And that could just be copium, as the kids say, of me as a fan trying to give an excuse for why Texas didn't come away with the W in Columbus. But I don't know. I wonder if you're going to see more of a layering on of the offense as the season goes on, saving some stuff for Florida, Red River, and Georgia more, that he would have normally rolled out against Michigan, against Alabama in years past.
One thing that I think Evan and I touched on in our post press conference video, but I think really after thinking about it for a few hours makes a lot of sense, is the players are figuring out what they're good at. And that means the coaches are figuring out what the players are figuring out. So, yeah, the coaches and the players, you would hope, you would think, by all accounts, they have excellent rapport with each other. They're able to tell, hey, I like this, I don't like this. That's quarterback, that's cornerback, that's running back, that's O-line, that's stuff like that. But they're still figuring a lot of that out. And I saw someone mention, like, maybe if they had a spring game. Well, they had a spring game, we just didn't watch it. It was just another scrimmage. So that aspect of it doesn't hold for me. But there are aspects of this team figuring out what it's good at against these opponents where they can get away with that. And then the coach is learning, okay, here we go. And Sark talked about that. Like, maybe when we pressed a little bit on scheme, we should have gone on technique and fundamentals. And if you're thinking about gap running, well, you can still do the techniques and fundamentals on gap running. You can do the same thing on zone running. And if you figure out, like, okay, our offensive line's better at these parts of zone as compared to these parts of gap, well, then your game plan is going to feature a lot more zone and stuff like that. A lot of that depends on the backs. It's all a big picture, but like, there's still, because of the youth on this team, and even though they try to throw as many reps as possible to younger players in practice and things like that, like, there's still only so much time you get as a college football coach with college football players. They have to play school a little bit. They don't live in the facility. They aren't, characters in a video game that you just turn on, play, and turn off. Like, they do battle time. And I think for the first time in a couple of years, we might be seeing Texas not like battle time and lose, but show a little bit more signs of that battle for time and with time, and trying to get some of these players who weren't starters last year, and specifically on the offense, into roles and into responsibilities and into a shape where they're ready to go. And I think one of the best things that you said about it was that can be extremely gratifying and extremely entertaining to watch with wins over a course of a season.
Yeah, and I think one thing you're seeing with the three players that I highlighted today, Arch Manning, Ryan Wingo, and Colin Simmons, the fact that, hey, these guys might be more athletic, more talented than the normal person and the normal fan could ever imagine. But you're seeing that they're not characters on a video game. You're seeing that they're not robots, because you can see them physically trying to do too much. Colin Simmons has one of the best get-offs that you've ever seen. And he's clearly trying to almost time the snap too much. And that's why he has so many offsides penalties. He's getting personal fouls because he's he's getting frustrated that he's not getting the sack total that he wants to get. You're seeing Ryan Wingo maybe thinking too hard. Oh, I finally have an open field in front of me, so I have an uncharacteristic drop. The Arch Manning interception in the red zone the other day, that was almost just a classic Manning interception to me, where I was just like, okay, he is related to these guys, because I can't tell you how many times I saw Peyton and Eli make that throw where there was like, surely I can get it there, even though I've got someone's arm on me. Oh, wait, no, I can't. It's going the other direction. I mean, that's a gunslinger pick. Arch Manning's going to have more of those, but I think the throws to people's feet who have just been widely discussed, those dirt balls that he's been throwing, I think that's a sign of he's trying to do too much. He's maybe overthinking a route. He's overthinking scheme, or he's not just trusting maybe in his natural athleticism in his training. He's overthinking it. So I think you're really seeing the mindset that those three players are almost like a microcosm of the whole team. And you juxtapose that with somebody like Anthony Hill, who had 2 forced fumbles the other day. And Anthony Hill's always been a freak athlete, but that second forced fumble where he just basically puts his own spin on the Derek Johnson forced fumble, that's something that only comes from years of practice and years of training and layering all the things that you've learned, just being able to Superman punch, because yeah, it looks freakishly athletic, but that is just 1000% technique. So you almost see somebody like that who he's totally playing within himself. And I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition, watching the young guys or some of the vets on the team the other day against San Jose State. Michael Taft was another example of like, that guy was flying around, making plays everywhere. Can't tell you how many times I just noticed him pop off the screen, but he's just totally playing within himself, not trying to do too much, but he's still able to make plays.
And just for one bit on the defense, like we saw Grayson Littleton get burned. Like better quarterbacks would have punished him for his performance this past game, at least on a few reps. And so there's still some of that growth that has to come on defense, where guys like a 5th-year guy like Taft, a 3rd-year uber talented guy, not Taft's uber talented, uber talented guy like Anthony Hill, all these guys who they're entering their 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year, you can just see a little bit different way of approaching the game. Even Leonga Lafau, I mean, that's someone who it definitely applies to. You can see the way that he approaches the game, and then some of these other defensive guys just still taking some time to get their sea legs, for lack of a better term. But hey, UTEP, they're not going to pose much of a challenge. I think I've said pretty often that the order of difficulty in Texas non-conference play is descending, and it goes steep downhill to start, and then it kind of continues to go further and further down. I think San Jose State's going to be a bowl team. I think that UTEP could get there. And then I think Sam Houston State's going to be god-awful. So,
and then obviously with Florida losing over the weekend, not to step on our Schadenfreude of the week, but that I think obviously they have a long road ahead of them. They obviously have a bye week before Texas, but took the L this weekend at home to South Florida, and then they have LSU or Miami this week, I believe, and then LSU, or is it the other way around? But either way.
It's going to be rough for them. Like they have them and Oklahoma. We can dive into Schadenfreude of the week. Like Oklahoma did its job. I think Sharon Moore looked to the future more than he did to the present, and he took a loss in the present as a result because that game plan was unimaginative. And if not for one busted fit, that game looks a lot worse on the scoreboard. It looks about like the Texas-Michigan game did last year. So credit to the Sooners there. But Florida, you just burned all your goodwill capital, especially against, if it happened against Georgia Tech, still bad. If it happened against Auburn, still bad. But South Florida, that is a school that University of Florida considers below it, and they lost to them. Ugh.
Yeah, that wasn't pretty, especially after coming back. They're down big and then coming back and taking the lead. You never want to lose that way, especially against an inferior opponent. Texas obviously saw that in 2021 against Kansas. But old Sunbelt Billy, after, maybe getting a little bit of those good graces of Florida fans and donors back in last year in 2024, man, he's run that pretty dry earlier in 2025. It reminds me a little bit of most Texas fans like myself were pretty ready to cut ties with Tom Herman at the end of 2019, but then you kind of talked yourself back into it. We had Sam Ehlinger coming back. You just wanted there to be a season so badly in 2020 that obviously, rubbed a little bit of a Band-Aid over that wound. And then Quinn Ewers committed. So you're like, okay, this is on the right track. And then Keontae Ingram stretches out his arm on the goal line against TCU and fumbles that game away. And then Texas loses to a bad Spencer Rattler-led OU team in 5 overtimes. And it was time for Tom Herman to leave. And that was basically the nail in his coffin, as Eric wrote at the time. But I'm very reminded of that situation with Florida that, man, Sunbelt Billy Napier got some of his goodwill back, and then he just poured it all down the drain immediately.
Yeah, it's you wrote that they have LSU in Miami, and then they get Texas on October 4th. And I think they have one more like cheapo game that they shouldn't lose, but who knows these days. South Florida, though, playoff contender from the G5. So that doesn't make anything better for Florida, but at the same time, Schadenfreude all the same. And then got to bring some Schadenfreude on you. Brought all the kiddos to DKR on Saturday, and 11 a.m. kickoffs. They wasn't super hot, but it still takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, this was just a full-on meltdown that happened right during Texas's 28-point barrage in the second quarter. My middle child there. Several people have been like, "Oh, it's so cute. She's taking a nap." This was not a nap. This was just a full-on tantrum out in the concourse outside I believe a Salt Lick concession stand outside of my section at DKR. So I really don't think I processed any of what was happening in the game or who was playing good or who was playing bad until I got home and was able to fire up the game on the cloud DVR there and watch that 28-point barrage and how it transpired. Because in the stadium, this is what I was dealing with. So, you can write a children's book about Longhorn football, which you can get now for 16% off. That's the biggest discount we've ever done. That number 16 is pretty important for the Longhorn fans this year on both sides of the ball. Get it at longhornalphabet.com. You can write a children's book inspired by your relationship with your kids over Texas football, and it doesn't mean anything to them. They're still going to be kids, and this is still going to happen. So yeah, it was pretty funny. But I definitely missed a lot more of the game than I was originally planning on.
I'll be there in a few years, and I'm looking forward to it. So, RT, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Going to be having things here all week in the lead up to the game against UTEP. And, of course, head to InsideTexas.com. First link in the description. Join for $1. Get a full year of access to The Athletic, but also join the best Texas Longhorns football community on the web. Get the best Texas Longhorns football insight, insider intel, analysis, and much more, plus recruiting coverage over on Inside Texas. So go make sure you sign up. Again, first link in our description. RT, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on the Reheat on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel, powered by InsideTexas.com.